Okay, Carlo, have give a try. The other one.
Okay.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah,
Let's give a warm of applause to Carlo.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so I will not present myself. So for time manners, if you guys are curious, you can add me on LinkedIn later. So I think it's useful to start asking ourselves what DeFi is. I brought here a couple of definitions. One is from the Bank of International Settlements. The other is from the European Central Bank. Essentially, DeFi is characterized by three core elements. The first one is the offering of financial services. The second one is the absence of intermediaries. This is the main difference between DeFi and not only traditional finance, but also CeFi. So in traditional finance and CeFi, we have a legal entity offering the services. In DeFi, the services are provided directly by protocols, decentralized protocols. And the third element is the latter one, so the presence of automation in form of smart contracts, for example, or in general blockchain technology. So now, what is the understanding of DeFi in our applicable law in Europe? Here we have a regulation called MiCA. MiCA is a regulation that is aiming at regulating in a broad scope crypto assets, directly targeting exchanges, and issuers of crypto assets. MiCA does not say much about DeFi. We find the DeFi in Recital 22. You find it written here. Essentially, what the Recital 22 says, it's DeFi falls outside the scope of our current regulation when it's fully decentralized. So when protocols or services are offered in a fully decentralized manner, while when there's a level of centralization, even partial, then the regulation still applies. This makes a major difference because it's very complicated to offer DeFi, like decentralized protocols and services, still complying with MiCA regulation. This is a game changer for all DEXs and all those who want to offer services on crypto assets in a decentralized manner. We will discover a little bit more about this because we have a problem. MiCA does not say what full decentralization is. What do we understand with full decentralization, and what is the difference between partial decentralization and full decentralization? So we somehow need to ask ourselves. A first attempt to attack decentralization, DeFi, has been done by the Danish Financial Authority. They essentially interpreted in a very restrictive manner the concept of DeFi, or they interpreted in a very extensive manner the application of MiCA regulation. And essentially they said that in order to understand when a protocol is actually fully decentralized, we need to do a double assessment. The first one is on the technicalities, on the technology. So we need to have elements that prove that the service is offered in a decentralized way. And then we need to have an assessment of the governance. So it's more like a legal assessment. So for example, we should not have any entity governing the protocol. We should have no person that has a special access or special rights according to how the smart contracts are structured. And we should have no concentration of governance tokens. So as you can see, like checking all the assessments is not very easy. It's not very easy to have all the elements that the Danish Financial Authority requires for decentralization. But we should also ask ourselves, what is a CASP under MiCA? What is an exchange under the MiCA regulation? So here we find a definition. There's two elements that I decided to point out that are more relevant for our discussion. The first one is the concept of legal undertaking. So to be regulated as a CASP, a crypto asset service provider under MiCA, you need to be a legal person on an undertaking. Watch out, because this concept is very broad under European law. This means that even if you don't incorporate a company, still you can be considered an undertaking under European law. The second concept is the offering of crypto asset services. If you do not offer a service that is considered a crypto asset service, then you are not a crypto asset service provider, right? So what are the crypto asset services under MiCA? We have a list here. I will not go through one by one because we don't have the time. But you find the typical services that are offered often by exchanges. So the exchange of crypto assets, for example, or like a managing of trading platforms, but they can be relevant also for DeFi projects, right? So the thing is that the way the law is now structured brings us necessarily to ask ourselves every time we find a project, to ask ourselves, is it actually decentralized or is it not? It's not very clear. It's a case-by-case analysis because we need to reach a sufficient level of decentralization in order to fall outside the scope of the regulation. If we are not able to reach all those elements, then we are only considered partially decentralized, and therefore MiCA does apply, which is often a major project killer. It's very often a project killer. This means that we need to ask ourselves a few questions. I brought here some of the typical questions, but there's a long list of questions that we need to ask ourselves to actually confirm that a project is decentralized. And we also need to remember that the law and the lawmaker and the financial authorities usually apply a general principle, which is this one: same risks, same rules. It means that if you're offering services that bring to consumers risks that are typical of regulated services, for example, if you bring to consumers risks that are typical of investment firms, so for example, financial, all the risks relating to financial investments, then you should be regulated in the same way. So it's a very broad understanding of the law. It's a broad application of the law that usually tries to keep in the scope of the law also DeFi projects. I brought to you a couple of examples. This is the first one. This is a DEX based on an automated market making model. And in our DEX, the developers who designed the protocol decided to create the first pool, adding BTC and ETH. And we are assuming, for this example, that the entire protocol is actually fully decentralized, okay? It's fully decentralized, but our developers created the first pool. Now, question is this group of developers subject to MiCA? Well, we should ask ourselves if the service that they are offering is a crypto asset service. I brought here, I outlined, like I pointed out the service that is more relevant, the exchange of crypto assets for other crypto assets. You find here the definition. As you can see, the main concept of this service is that you are allowing your clients to exchange crypto assets by using your own crypto. So you use your own crypto, exchanging with clients so they can exchange crypto for crypto. This is typical for an exchange, but hey, it can work here as well, right? Because our group of developers created the first pool using their own crypto so that users interacting with the protocol are actually exchanging their crypto assets with the crypto assets used by the developers to create the pool. This means that MiCA could apply? Maybe yes. What if they do not create the pool? Then we assume that the protocol is fully decentralized. Question is, are users considered subject to MiCA because users create the pools? Probably no, because users are not acting on a professional basis. So they're not targeting clients. They're acting on their own, okay? I brought a second example, is a DAO. In this example, we are imagining a DAO where the three developers, founders, hold 40% of the governance tokens, allowing them to propose, to vote, to do almost everything. And we imagine that this DAO is offering crypto asset services, like a trading platform, for example. Now, the question is the DAO subject to MiCA? Well, being a DAO does not automatically mean that the law thinks you act in a decentralized manner. We need to ask ourselves if the project is actually decentralized. In this case, we need to analyze certain aspects. I brought here the more relevant. We need especially to ask ourselves if the DAO, the governance of the DAO, actually allows us to confirm that it's decentralized. Usually, we use certain certain criteria, like the Nakamoto coefficient. So this is essentially, with the Nakamoto coefficient, we are asking ourselves how many persons, how many actors you need to reach a certain decision, how many persons you need to amend the protocol, to vote, to confirm a certain amendment of the protocol. So applied to DAOs, this means understanding how many people you need, how many voters you need to take action. If it's just a small amount of people, bam, this is probably decentralized. Centralized, sorry. So you applied Mika, and again, this could be a major project killer. The hot case is the online interfaces. This is an example that is brought by the Danish Financial Authority. Online interfaces are essentially the front end that allow users to interact more easily with the centralized protocols. You know, you as a user can you can interact with smart contracts directly, but the majority of users cannot do that. So you have interfaces that allow you to interact with the DEX. Is the interface possibly a sign of a crypto asset service under Mika? Well, according to the Danish authority, yes. According to the Danish authority, these two services, execution of orders and receiving and transmitting of orders, are the typical services that are offered through online platforms. To be honest, I disagree with this opinion. I believe execution of orders, it's very unlikely, because usually you don't give your crypto to the online platform so that the online platform execute the orders, but you sign yourself the transactions directly, interacting with the smart contract. So it's very unlikely. Receiving and transmitting of orders, this is more tricky, because this is a service in which you receive the orders of the users, and then you just tell the entity that is offering the service about the order, and then the contract is between the entity and the consumer. This is more disputed. According to Consob, so the Italian Financial Authority, they gave a communication in 1999 regarding websites. Back then, it was more like Web 2, of course. And it was relating to financial services. Essentially, Consob said you do not have this receiving and transmitting of order service when the platform is actually only functioning as an interface that is essentially just a UI for the user. So the user is entering in the contract directly with the financial provider. So you don't have a relationship between the provider of financial services and the website. So the website is not, for example, selecting the providers of financial services that it wants to conclude the transaction with. But still, this was a very specific case. So I think this argument can be still not necessarily applicable here, because you don't have a provider of financial services. You don't have a provider of services in the case of DeFi, but the person is interacting directly with a smart contract. In general, though, I believe, and major players in the industry believe, that online interfaces actually function merely as a UI system, so like it's just a front end that allows you to more easily interact with the smart contract. But the smart contract is the offerer of the service. You sign the transaction using, I don't know, your MetaMask directly on the smart contract. But I still will say, watch out, because this is not a clear point, and authorities like Consob could still go after you if you offer an online platform. So let's focus now on the risk perspective, because we said DeFi protocols, when fully decentralized, can fall outside the scope of MiCA. This does not mean that they do not bring risks to consumers. Actually, risks can be even higher than regulated services. We have here some typical risks for consumers, I don't know, relating to technology, finance, risks connected to frauds, and so on and so forth. What does it mean? It means that when we see it's a service that is so, risky for the users, we need to somehow regulate it. I think, and this is like the conclusion of my speech, I think that regulating DeFi under the current regulation, it's not bringing anywhere. It's actually bringing probably to more risk, because we will never see software companies applying for MiCA licensing. It's literally impossible. And this will be a total killer of DeFi in Europe, at least, if we will regulate it under the current regulations. Probably the solution would be, or I hope it will be, a targeted regulation. This could be in MiCA 2 or a different regulation that is taking into account the particularities of DeFi protocols. So, for example, auditing, certifications, and all this stuff that allow protocols to act still in a decentralized manner, but without being subject to the typical obligations that are required by MiCA, which is focused on exchanges. Probably our regulator still doesn't really understand the difference between a decentralized protocol and a centralized exchange. Yeah, so that's it. If you have more questions about it, or you want to discuss like weird nerdy stuff, I'm here. You find me here. I can also share the slides with you guys if you are curious about it. Thank you.